Tu tawa mai I runga, tu tawa mai I raro, tu tawa mai I waho, tu tawa mai I roto. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, haumie, huie, tai kie. Kia ora e te whānau. It is absolutely wonderful to have you all here. Ko Rachel Brown toko ingoa. I am the Chief Executive and the founder of Sustainable Business Network, and absolutely delighted to be able to kick off today's session, which is going to take about an hour. Before I hand over to the extraordinarily well-informed partners that will be part of this session today, just going to give you a little bit of a background, just to remind those of you who may not be so new in this space about what the heck SBN is doing with climate. So for those of you who are not aware, SBN has always worked in climate, but over the last 3 years, we've had a partnership with the private and the public sector, of whom you've already seen the logos of. And our focus has been really on how do we accelerate the uptake of climate action within the business community, with a particular focus on the small and medium-sized business sector. We've done that in partnership with a bunch of organisations who have made it absolutely possible for this work to be really successful, and we're extremely proud of the work we've been doing over the last 3 years. The majority of the work that we've been doing is centred around the development of a really useful climate action toolbox, which is online and features on the biz.gov website. And it really is about helping businesses learn, measure and act on climate. We've very deliberately made this happen for SMEs and tried to bust some of the things that was stopping businesses from acting in previous years. So it has to be free. It has to be easy to use, and the solutions that we're talking about are non-debatable and really pragmatic for our businesses here. And that's been really important foundation of the work. The other thing that's been really important for us is to look at the wider levers for change. So the way that larger organisations can use the tool has been thinking of it as a supplier tool, as well as getting to grips with climate for their customers. So over the next hour, we're going to share some updates on what we've been doing in this last year. So 3 things: we're simplifying the tool, and Rose is going to talk about that. We're helping businesses set their own targets, so there's a process for that. And the last thing, which is really exciting, is we're starting down the process of developing sector guidance. And this first one that we're launching today is around construction. So it's going to be a really, really informative session. I'm absolutely delighted you've all come along to listen. We're going to bring you up to date with this in quite a lot more detail. And it's going to be a fabulous piece of work and a fabulous session of just bringing everyone up to date. You can see on your screen, this is what we're going to run through. And I'm going to be passing you in a minute to Jordan. You're going to also hear from Rosa and Georgia. We're going to hear from Susanna on the construction sector research. And then we're going to go back to run through some of the work that we're doing in our future plans with Rosa and Georgia, who are the fabulous team who lead this. And then we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A at the end to see if we can answer some of your critical questions, so you don't feel like you don't know what you're doing by the time we leave. We're not going to be able to answer all the questions, but for some of you, we will be sending you more detail post this if we don't get to answer your questions today. So wonderful to be here. I'm now going to hand over to Jordan, who's the Senior Product Advisor with the Small Business Services team at MB. And thank you again for coming.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rachel. And as mentioned, I'll just be doing a bit of the scene setting today. So starting off with what is Small Business Services and what we do. So Small Business Services sits in the business and consumer branch here at MB, and exists to help small businesses succeed. To do this, we constantly look to improve the valuable interactions within our ecosystem, putting businesses at the centre of what we do, and continually striving to better understand businesses and the environmental factors that affect them. So within SBS, Small Business Services, we offer a range of one-to-many and one-to-one products to provide this support. So some of our services include our Better for Business program, which is a cross-agency research and insights program developed to champion New Zealand business. The Regional Business Partner Network, who connects small businesses to the right advice, people and resources through their one-to-one advisory services in 14 regions across New Zealand. and the New Zealand business number, a unique number that enables you to share your business details with customers and suppliers with confidence. And then finally, business.govt.nz, where the climate action tool lives. So the business.gov website exists to simplify business tasks and compliance by building capability in businesses and connecting our audience with the next step in their journey at the level of detail required. So biz.gov ensures high levels of engagement by maintaining an independent level of trust and authority when discussing topics within business. Along with the climate action tool, some of our other products include the employment agreement and workplace policy builders, which help you build tailored employment agreements, and workplace policies to suit your business needs. Our One Check tool to check if your proposed business name, trademark, web domains are available. And also Brave in Business, an e-learning series designed to help you prioritize your well-being so you can run your business more effectively. So then how does all of this relate to a sustainable business network, the relationship we've developed, and then the climate action program? So with insights from our Better for Business team and research conducted by biz.gov, it was clear that small business owners were increasingly aware of the role sustainability played in the long-term success of their small business, but they required more detail on how to take action. So in response, we launched a program of work and partnered with Sustainable Business Network, who had already been doing amazing work with small to medium enterprises and had developed content with other government agencies. Together, we produced informative content on sustainability to answer two common questions business have when approaching environmental sustainability. What is environmental sustainability and how to be environmentally sustainable? Both of these pieces of content were incredibly well received by our audience. So from there, in May of 2019, the Climate Change Response Amendment Bill was ratified. This provided the framework for New Zealand to develop and implement climate change policies in accordance with the Paris Climate Agreement. And with 97% of businesses belonging to small to medium enterprises, we thought it was important to conduct further research with Stern University to determine the most impactful areas for small businesses to reduce emissions. Then towards the end of 2020, the Sustainable Business Network initiated the 5-year climate action program with business.gov, further public sector and private sector partners for the development of an online platform with practical resources and inspiring case studies to make it easy for small businesses to take action and reduce their carbon emissions and become climate resilient. So in March 2021, with the emissions reduction impact areas determined and our climate action program in place, the climate action tool came to life by way of a tailored, practical and actionable emissions reduction plan for small business. This included a short self-assessment to identify which of these emission reduction areas are relevant to your business, steps to take in each impact area to reduce emissions, guidance for how you can achieve what you have included in your plan, and valuable information and resources from the public and private sector to assist in your progress. And of course, there are inspiring case studies detailing the success of other small businesses on their emissions reduction journeys. Then in 2022, we introduced a free carbon emissions calculator to continue supporting businesses on their journey to reducing their carbon footprint. The emissions calculator allows businesses to enter emissions data about their energy and fuel use, freight, business travel, waste, and more. So over a 12-month period, you can understand your total emissions impact and the specific areas of the business the emissions have come from. The results will also allow you to set a clear benchmark for monitoring progress year on year. And if you want to flip to the next slide. And then since launching the climate action tool in March of 2021, we've had a total of 43,025 unique users begin their climate journey, with 25,283 users coming since the launch of the emissions calculator. So that is the somewhat shorter summary of how we've landed here today. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank all of the partners and Georgia and Rosa for their contributions and hard work for making the climate action tool a success. And now over to both Rosa and Georgia.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Ko Georgia tōku ingoa. I am Georgia Brown and lead the climate-related work here at SBN. Beyond excited to be delivering this tool to you all today. So my job is going to be running through the tool in a minute, but before I give you that demo, I'm going to be handing over to Rosa, who's going to give a bit of an overview about the changes that we've made. So, Rosa.
Kia ora, thanks Georgia. Kia ora koutou, ko Rosa tōku ingoa. So my name is Rosa and I'm a project and partnership manager in the climate team alongside Georgia at SBN. So super excited to give you an overview of the latest release of the Climate Action Toolbox. So as has been mentioned, the Toolbox has been designed to help small to medium-sized businesses in Aotearoa to start measuring and taking action to reduce their carbon emissions. It's more and more important that businesses are playing their part in taking climate action seriously, which is why every year we aim to release a new iteration of the Toolbox. So this is to continue improving the tool, ensuring it can deliver to these businesses and really help them overcome some of the barriers that they're facing to tackling climate change. So before I talk you through some of these enhancements we're focused on for this year, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of the partners who have made this work possible. So the Toolbox has been designed and developed in collaboration with an amazing group of organisations from the public and private sector. So we've just heard from Jordan from MB Small Business Services team, but also a massive shout out to our other partners. So you can see on the screen, BNZ, ECA, New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, Spark, Waka Kotahi, and lastly DNA, who do a fantastic job each year on the design and the development of our beautiful toolbox. So jumping into this year's release, so over the past few years we've received feedback from users on how we can make the tool work better for business. So we take all of this on board and have used this information and feedback to decide on some key enhancements to focus on for this year's release. So as Georgia mentioned, I'm going to give you a quick overview and then hand over to Georgia to give you a live demo of the new toolbox. So firstly, what we've heard, people want it to be simple. So what we've done this year is we've looked at how we can improve the overall user experience and navigation so that users can clearly see where they're at in their journey and identify the next action that they should take. So overall, this will reduce the amount of time and effort from businesses required for them to take action. Secondly, people want help knowing what good looks like and what they should be aiming for. So what we've done this year is we've included a new target setting module, which is based on a science-aligned method. So essentially, once a business has completed their initial emissions measurement, the toolbox will set a reduction target for them. So this will really help SMEs to understand what they should be aiming for in terms of emission reductions over the next 10 years and can track this progress each year towards that goal. Thirdly, to further simplify the tool and minimise the effort required from users, we've created stronger links between the calculator results and the recommended actions that you should be taking. So once a business completes their carbon measurement, they'll see the climate actions that are most relevant to their results. So this is making it super simple and clear, saving the users time and ensuring that they're taking meaningful actions that will reduce their carbon footprint. And lastly, as Rachel touched on, we've heard that people want the information to be specific to their sector. So this year we've introduced sector-specific guidance throughout the tool, starting off with the construction industry. And the aim is that we're going to roll this out for other industries in the future. So that's a very brief overview of the enhancements, but to give you more of an idea of what these look like, I'm going to hand over to Georgia, who's going to walk us through the first 3 points. We'll then take a deeper look at the construction enhancement in the second half of the webinar.
Awesome, thank you, Rosa. So we are going to hop over to our new tool. This is what the homepage looks like. So I'll just give us a bit of a run through, and hopefully this will just give everyone a really clear idea of how to use the tool. Also, if you're a bigger business and are wanting to show SMEs, maybe people in your supply chain, how to use it, this should give a good idea. So as mentioned, we've had about 42,000 unique visits to the tool, which is a really significant number here in Aotearoa. So we're super proud of that, and hopefully after today that's going to grow pretty significantly too. So there's three key areas to the tool now, which is learn, measure, and act. So the idea is you can hop on. We've got so much information about how to take different climate actions in your business. So you should have a really good understanding on how to get started. And this is the learn module. The measure piece is the carbon calculator that was introduced last year. We haven't made any significant changes to the calculator itself, but there are some pieces that have been added once you've done that calculation, which I can show soon. And then the act part. So that's the creating your action plan, and then hopefully you can go away and start to implement some of the actions that you can create on your list. One thing we've also been working away on is creating some new case studies. There have already been some amazing ones in here, but we've continued to develop more, and we're making them more detailed as well. People are really asking for, step-by-step guides and, examples of others that have taken action. So we're building those out, and there's some really good new ones there to have a look through. This little how it works piece is hopefully just a super simple and clear idea on how to actually work through the tool. So pretty aligned with that piece above. Learn first, so come and have a read through some of the actions that you can take. Then we really encourage people to go and do your footprint. Obviously that's a more time intensive, energy intensive piece of work. And then finalize your action plan and get started. So again, we've got our wonderful partners down here. And what we're going to do is get started. So for this first run through, I'm just going to pretend to be SBN and use us as an example. So this industry question is new. So I'm going to say that we are in professional, scientific and technical services. For this drop down here, we've used the ANZIC industry classification. So it might be that your business doesn't fit perfectly into one of these. Just pick the one that's best for you. It's always going to be a little bit difficult sometimes. So our business activity mostly takes place in an office. Our people travel relatively frequently, and that tends to be for business meetings. Our core operations don't require the transport of goods, materials or waste to or from our business, and our business isn't involved in the design and manufacture of property, structures and products. So it's as simple as that. Took us, 1 minute to get through there. So we go next, and what will happen is that the toolbox has looked at that information and it determines what our priority areas are that we should be focusing on. So it's recognized that moving people and office operations are the two groups where we can probably have the most significant impact on our emissions. So these are our biggest areas. We've also got here a list of quick wins. So it might be that a user wants to flick through here and go, are there any easy ones here? Offsetting your flight emissions. That's pretty simple. And we could potentially go add that to plan. If there's others that we think are relatively easy, like using lighting more efficiently, we can click on here. So these are all of the guides that each of these actions have. So we've got a little indicator on the potential impact that these actions can have on your emissions, and a step-by-step guide. So they're not designed to be prescriptive, but should give all of the basic information that you need to consider whether that action is going to be relevant for your business. We link off to a bunch of other really good resources. Brands has heaps of amazing information on their website. The idea with this toolbox is that we don't want to reinvent the wheel and just replicate a whole lot of information that's already out there. Where it makes sense, we want to link off to other good resources. So we do that where we can. In each of the actions as well, we've got some good little pointers on why take that action. We know that people need a bit of help sometimes getting things across the line, whether that's with leadership or your board, or maybe even just other people in your team. So a few little points there that can help with that. So what we want to do is browse all actions. And we'll go into moving people to start with. So let's go into switching to electric vehicles. That's something that a lot of people have been pretty interested in. And I think it's the end of the month, isn't it? Tomorrow's the last day for the fuel subsidy. So this is definitely something that people are starting to consider more and more. Also, as better vehicles are coming onto the market too. So again, step-by-step guide. We link off to some great resources. Genless, another really, really good website here, but on why take this action, and most of the actions have case studies as well linked to them too. So we can do that. Great. So users should sort of move through these, have a look at what they want to add to their plan, and then we'll go back to the toolbox. And we can see here that this action we've added is added to our plan. If there's something, say, for example, we don't fly, we could say, mark that as not relevant, that will get deleted, and use personal cars more efficiently, say that we already do that, we can mark that as done, and that will come up in our complete section. So what we'll do next is, I should have logged in, which I thought I was, but we'll do that in a second. Emissions calculator. Again, we've got the case studies here, and we've also got a big group of guides too. So on sort of areas that aren't included in the actions list. So one thing that people were starting to think more and more about is how to prepare for climate change risks. Obviously, we're starting to see more impact from climate change affecting us, especially in the past few months, which has been really devastating. So some pointers here on how to prepare your business to deal with those risks as they start to increase. NIWA has got a really good basic tool there that people can hop onto and start to consider some of those things that need to be done. So yeah, a few little goodies there. Also, communicating and marketing your success is something that people really want some help with. So you just have to bear with me for 1 second while I log in. I must have just been timed out. Sorry about that. Testing. Oh. So what we'll do is now hop into our calculator. So I'll show people what that looks like. So apologies for those who have used it already. This is pretty much exactly the same as what it's been looking like, but conscious there'll be a few new people on the call. So what's involved? You'll need to choose your initial reporting period, then gather that data that you need to input, and then you can go and analyze your results and track your progress year on year. So we're going to get started with our calculations. Something we recommend people do is align reporting years with your financial reporting years. This just makes it easier. It's likely you're going to be working with your accounts team to get all of this information together. So it should just make life a bit simpler. And then we've got these 6 groups that we'll need to work through. Not every one of these is going to be relevant to every single organization. You might not use, coal in your buildings. We don't. And you might also not use outsourced freight if you're not transporting goods to and from your business. But the idea is you just need to go through and figure out what's relevant. The sort of term we use is like what's material to your footprint as well. So we've got some guidance there around how to understand that. So I'm just going to pick some random numbers today. Electricity in your building use or on sites, place to find that on your electricity statement. So if there are any data fields here where you're a bit stuck on where to find that information, we've got some little handy tips that you can work through. Fuels for owned or leased vehicles. We've got a hybrid car at SBN. We don't use very much petrol at all. Like I say, I'm just putting random numbers in. Outsourced freight, that's something that's not relevant to us, so we can just skip through this one. Business travel, a little bit of private car use happens to get up to different meetings, and also a little bit of domestic air travel. We do have a really strict flights policy, so we're pretty good there. Waste to landfill, we do some waste audits to keep tabs. The thing to check there is whether your landfill has got gas recovery or doesn't have gas recovery. And then working from home, that has been a slightly bigger one post-COVID, and as a few sneaky people have gone remote. So that means that there's carbon associated with working from home too. Also, we have this other emissions data field. If there are pieces like commuting, for example, which aren't currently in the calculator, and you do want to include that, there's an option to complete that calculation elsewhere. So you'll have to go and find the emission factors yourself, but hopefully there's a little link over here off to the MFE set that we use, and then you can put that in. So it will show me my emissions, and this is what it looks like. So really helpfully, we've got a bit of a visual guide on where the majority of our emissions are sitting. So we can see straight away, business travel is making up 49.88% of our total footprint. So this is probably the area that we want to focus on the most. Then we've got energy use, fuels, and other. That's where our working from home piece is sitting. Another helpful thing we've included is the carbon intensity piece. So if we put this in, it will show us what our emissions are per $1 million of revenue. The idea with this is that businesses change in size. It might, yours might grow or shrink year on year, and this is just a way to help, I guess, like navigate how your footprint is looking as those changes happen. It's also a way that you can use to compare with other organizations as well. So that's a good little tip. Then if we mark as complete, we can see now it's turned green. It's like the nice color, and that the footprint is equivalent to 0.9 return flights between Auckland and London. We can't change our emissions once that has happened as well. So 2 new things happen now. We get our emission reduction target, and we also get a group of recommended actions based on our footprint. So we can see here that these are the key areas that made up our footprint. So business travel, that was the 49.88%. And these are some actions that we can take to tackle that part of our footprint. So this is a really clear link now between those actions and the emission data that we've put in. So what I'll do is show us a bit about this target piece. So as mentioned, these are science-aligned targets. People might have heard of Science-Based Targets Initiative before. to claim that you've got a science-based target, it's a pretty rigorous process and it needs to be audited by the Science-Based Targets Initiative. So you can't do that. But what we have done is find this method that's sort of saying everyone needs to reduce by 50% in 10 years' time. So it's a good target to be setting if you're a SME. We're not expecting that small businesses have got the funds to go out and go through this target setting process and get it audited. So we're just giving some really clear, a clear place to go for here. So we can see what our footprint for the previous year was, what we should be looking at next year, and we should be in 10 years' time. This handy little graph that's been put together as well allows you to track your actual emissions against the targets year on year. So that should be a really helpful and clear visual for people. Again, we've got these case studies down here. So how are we going for time? I think that is probably what we've got on the tool for now. I'll continue to go through the construction piece in a moment, but firstly, I'd like to hand over to Susanna, who is our wonderful supporter from Building for Climate Change, who we've luckily been able to complete some research with DNA, thanks to the support of her. So I'll hand over to you, Susanna, to talk through that research.
Ngā mihi, Georgia. So, ahi Marie e te whānau, ko Susanna Tillman, tōku ingoa, he kai whakahaere aho ki Building for Climate Change ki he kina whakatutuki. So as I mentioned, my name is Susanna Tillman, and I'm the manager at MB's Building for Climate Change team, which is part of MB's Building Systems Performance branch. So as many of you will know, and if you can just advance the slides there, Georgia, government has set in law a target of net zero greenhouse emissions by 2050, so other than biogenic methane. And to help us achieve that goal, we've established the Building for Climate Change program with the vision of having New Zealand's building-related emissions be near zero by 2050, or providing healthier places to work and live for present and future generations. We're also concerned about climate resilience and adaptation. So while doing that, we also want to make sure our homes and buildings are resilient to the impacts of climate change and meet people's social and cultural needs. And so we know that that's going to require a shift in the way that we think about our buildings, both from consumers, but also from the building and construction sector. We need to think about how we use our buildings, how we can think about different designs and processes for how we make those buildings. So why do building and construction emissions matter at all? So when we think about emissions, we often think of the big ticket items, so flying and driving, and we know from Georgia's exercise that she just showed that they are really important to reduce emissions from those areas. But what's easy to dismiss is the role that the building and construction sector plays in contributing to those emissions. So as an industry, the sector contributes 15% of Aotearoa's greenhouse gas emissions, with the exception of biogenic methane. And when you put it like that, we can't afford to ignore taking action as the sector. But we know it's really hard to understand what actions the sector can take, particularly if you're a small to medium enterprise and you can't afford to employ somebody full-time to tell you what to do differently. So that's why we partnered with SBN and also with DNA to find out more about what we can do to support small to medium enterprise buildings to take action and to reduce emissions and be more climate resilient. So what we set out to understand by procuring some research was the motivations, awareness and barriers and capability of small to medium enterprises to make change. So how motivated are you? Do you know what you can do? What's stopping you from taking action? So we first set out to understand that, but we also wanted to know along the way, for those people who are already using the Climate Action Toolbox, how can you get more out of that? And what can we learn from the way that you're using the toolbox at the moment? And then if you're not using the toolbox, or if you go into the toolbox learn about what you can do and then don't do anything. Why not? And are you getting that information elsewhere, or are there changes that we can make to help encourage you to continue to take action once you've got the information about what you can do? So to get to the bottom of this, we commissioned DNA to do some research, and we went out and we interviewed 25 different small to medium enterprise organizations, from single person owner operators up to some of those at the larger scale of the small to medium enterprise, so up to say 30 to 50 employees. And we interviewed them over 2 separate interview times to get to the bottom of their views on these questions. We also sent out surveys to 99, we were aiming for 100, didn't quite get there, 99 organisations to get their views in survey form. When we talked to them and when we talked to the sector, we had a number of hypotheses in mind. So we thought that businesses aren't really motivated to take action because maybe they don't know what they can do. What we found was that businesses do reduce emissions if you're also aware that they provide a cost benefit to you. But it's really hard to take action if you don't know, or you're not motivated to take action if there's no clear reason for doing so and if there isn't a strong enough incentive. What we also found is if we make information available through channels and networks which you already use and engage with and feel safe and trusted, then you can also be encouraged to take further action. And finally, if we provide more specific information about the actions that you can take, then you, with enough detail to allow you to continue to take those actions, then that will provide additional benefits. So when we got the results, there were a number of key findings. So we knew from the results that businesses are generally concerned about the climate impact of their operations. So 43% of businesses told us they were, 31 were not, and that's not too surprising. The biggest motivator overall to taking action is reducing operating costs in the business. So in some cases, if there are other actions that are more important to the strategy of the business and they also led to reduction in emissions, then that was, I guess, a bonus for doing so. And that reflects the final point we have on the screen here, that most businesses have a strategy about reducing costs or growth, but not necessarily specifically a carbon reduction one, or one that talks specifically to carbon reduction. You notice I skipped over the one at the top. It was a key finding, really. When we talk about what is awareness and motivation mean for businesses, what we learnt was it means very different things to different businesses depending on where you are in your personal journey around climate change and your understanding and awareness of climate change, and also about where you are on your journey in terms of understanding what actions you can take and what you know is something that you as a business can do, what's tangible to you. So what comes next? So, and what can we do to help support you? So what we did learn, so what we were also interested in is how people were accessing information about what actions they could take. And we noted that the Climate Action Toolbox was one of about 10 or 15 different toolboxes or sources of information that the businesses trusted to get information on what steps they could take next. But what we did find in 35% of cases, that even when people found information, the information they found was not necessarily particularly relevant or helpful. And so that's why we're really excited about the work that SBN has been doing and has done to add sector-specific pathways to the Climate Action Toolbox. So this is about providing specific information to the building and construction sector that will help them to take specific actions and continue their journey to reduce emissions and make their buildings more climate resilient. So we're excited to see how the industry learns through the tool and hopefully adopts some of the actions to make a real difference. We know that it's not sort of one size fits all for businesses, and we're really keen to see the mindsets of the of the building and construction sector develop and leverage the information in the tool to make the changes necessary to reduce New Zealand's overall emissions going forward. So I'm really excited. I'm going to hand back now to Georgia and let her demonstrate the building and construction sector specific pathways in the toolbox. But feel free to reach out and ask me if you've got any further and specific questions, either now or through the chat. Thanks. I'll leave it to you, Georgia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Susanna. That's a really great overview of what we did. So I'm just going to get the next version up and show you all through what we've done to reflect the findings from that research into the toolbox. So I'll just get this shared again. Essentially, all we need to do is go back to our piece on the assessment page, and we need to put in that we're in the construction industry this time around. So as an overview, the changes that we've made to the guides, to the action information, rather than the calculator, that's all stayed the same. But we have been able to understand that people wanted some really super practical information and case studies in the construction industry. So I will pretend to be a builder today while we fill this out. So we operate primarily in the construction industry. Our business activity mostly takes place at customer sites. Our people do travel frequently and for on-site work. Our core operations do require the transport of goods and materials and waste to or from our business, but we aren't involved in the design and manufacture of products. Take me to my actions. So you'll see that it looks pretty much exactly the same as the original assessment, but what we can see now is that we've got some slightly different tweaks here so that it's specific to the construction industry. Site operations and waste management is a little bit different. Moving goods and moving people, these are the same titles as the other themes that we'd looked at. But once we get into the information, we can see that it is more specific. So as Susanna mentioned, there are particular areas that the industry indicated they were really keen to learn about. That tends to be reducing waste, buying materials carefully, and also a bit around like the design of buildings and structures. So we've moved these ones up so that they're sort of the first things that people see. But what we're really encouraging with the tool is that people come on because they're interested in these areas, but we want these SMEs to start thinking more strategically about the action that can be taken. So yes, reducing waste is really important, but have a look through the tool. There's a whole lot of other areas that can be thought about and included in a plan. So we'll show you an example here. We've got a bit of information. Up to 50% of all waste generated in New Zealand comes from construction and demolition. That is very high. So definitely something that needs to be tackled and can't do that alone. So again, the same sort of architecture, I guess, as the original guides, step-by-step guides here on what should be considered. Something that we did hear in the research as well was that people wanted some good downloadable templates on how to do these things. So here's a little example. New Plymouth District Council has put together an awesome waste reduction plan template. So this is something that a lot of people are using and is a really simple way to get started on tackling waste. So hopefully there's some good resources for people in there in that sense. A bit about managing waste during construction, checking local options. This is a bit of a tricky one. We often have requests from people on specific materials and what can be recycled in certain regions. Obviously that differs across the country. So we just sort of suggest that people need to have a look around, which isn't like we've got a bank of exactly where everything can be recycled, but just hopefully some practical places to go and look to find that information. As I talked about earlier before, we've got construction specific case studies now included too. So that was something that showed up in the research as well that was really helping people. Once they had seen examples of others who had taken the action, the motivation can really increase. So we just want to sort of highlight some of the SMEs that are doing really good work, you know, congratulate them, but also help to inspire others to take action. Another key topic was buying and using materials carefully. We think this is only going to become more and more relevant, especially as we start to move to a lower carbon model of building. So we've got some sort of basic places to start on how to think about buying materials. So one suggestion we've got on here that we think is a really good place to go to is looking at environmental product declarations. That is just a good independent way to understand, you know, what materials are looking like through a life cycle assessment. A bit around different badges. Green Building Council's got lots of wonderful information as well. They're a really great body that people might also want to get some information from or use some of their standards. And again, some case studies here. So what I've shown you is the high priority areas. It might also be that some of the lower priority areas are relevant. Property structure and product design is something that will come up if you'd completed the assessment, say, as an interior designer. You might be working on, you know, on a remodel that's happening. And again, there's things you can be doing at the design stage to really be ensuring that, you know, that buildings are low waste, low carbon. So we could have a look at an action like tweaking and maintenance of buildings and structures. A bit of a mouthful, but that's okay. So we can hop in here. So a bit of a consideration to start with. Think about the whole life cycle of the building and understand where carbon is in our buildings. Brands has got some great videos that they've popped up on YouTube. So for people who are just wanting to learn about where carbon is in the life cycle, this is a really great resource. Again, it'll be things like looking at your materials, improving operations and energy efficiency. Obviously, that's really key once the building's in use. And again, reducing waste. Another thing that we've given people some pointers on is influencing decision makers. Because a lot of what we've found is that people sort of operate in their area, and it means that there's limitations in the control and the decisions that are being made, because it's quite a big process, obviously, getting a building together. So we're encouraging people to have that conversation with everyone who's involved. And if people need more pointers on how to do that and facilitate those conversations, you are welcome to reach out to us and we can help. Again, another really good case study on deconstruction here. And I think that's probably all we need to show now. So yeah, for construction, it's really the content in these pieces that we've created that should help people out the most. The calculator stayed the same, the targets are still going to be there, and the recommended actions are still going to be there, but you've just got more specific information for the industry. So the idea is that we'll eventually roll that out to other industries, and we can talk a little bit more about what they might be in the future, but that's the idea there. So that's the run through. I'll hand over to Rosa, who is going to talk about our future plans. Thanks, Rosa.
Thanks, Georgia. I'll whiz through this, so we've got a bit of time for Q&A at the end. But with the support of our partners, we've got another really exciting year planned ahead. So there's lots in the pipeline on what we want to do to improve the tool even more and embed it in business practices. So, for example, as Georgia just spoke to, we'll be looking to expand the tailored content out to other industries. We're also looking into how we can automate the carbon calculator to take some of the effort out of this process for the users. So there's so much we want to achieve over the coming year. We will need a lot of support to get there. So if anyone on this call is interested in supporting the tool, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Georgia, and our emails should pop up on the slide. Thanks.
Lovely, thank you, Rosa. So just wanted to take a moment again to thank our partners. All of these organisations have been super supportive with the tool this year. And I want to give a special mention to DNA, who have done the design and the development of the tool. The team's been absolutely wonderful, and also to Jordan from Small Business Services, who is our partner in crime over that side of things, and has been a wonderful addition to the team. Also a moment to thank the organisations that have been involved in the development of the construction content. So that's been Building for Climate Change, Brands, the Construction Sector Accord, Fletcher Building, and Think Step. And we just wanted to give some personal mentions to a few of the team as well. So I think we've got a bit of time for Q&A, but before we get into that, I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone who's hopped on today, and to the team who have put the tool together. We're really, really proud of where it is at the moment. We think that it's a great tool, and we really want it to be the place that people can go to get started. We know it's not the end point, and that you may want to move on to certified type programs with your emission measurements, or go and engage a consultant. That's fantastic. What we want to do is just really get people engaged and feel empowered to take action. And obviously year on year it's only becoming more and more important, and especially as we're starting to really feel the effects of climate change too. So hope that you all enjoy the new tool and share it around with your friends, and with any other SMEs that you think might want to get started. So with that, I think we can pass on to the Q&A.
I can take over here for some Q&A. We do only have about 7 minutes left, so we're going to try and whiz through as many of your questions as possible. Thanks to everyone who has been popping things into the chat. So I'm going to throw some questions out there. One that I've just seen from Angela from Brands around reaching out if you've got some good resources or case studies to add to the toolbox. Absolutely, we would love that. You can get in touch with myself or Georgia, and we'd be happy to talk through those with you directly. There's a quick question which I think I'll throw to Rachel. So how can local government help local businesses to use these tools and approaches?
Happy to do that, Rosa. That's from Tony. Tony, thank you. Great to see you. There's a bunch of ways that we'd be really encouraging any of the councils to work on this. Critical thing is mindsets need to shift. And the way that we can do that is through using the networks the council has to help them know that this is a tool that's free and useful for anyone. So there is no barrier to using the tool. So you guys can treat it like it's yours and get it out there and promote it. The other thing I'd really encourage councils to do is profile businesses that are local that are doing it, because a lot of businesses want to see this happen within the New Zealand context, but more specifically in their own region. We've done a few training programs in partnership with councils, and that's been really effective too, and that builds up a local network of actors, which I'd be really happy to talk to you about, Tony. And the last one is integrated into your procurement. The more that you guys start asking for it, the better. And finally, you could even start looking at how you incentivize using your rate systems. So there's lots of ways that council can do this. Back to you, Rosa.
Great, thank you, Rachel. There's a question here from Kim for Susanna. So how do the BFCC targets relate to things like Homestar? The requirements are different and which one takes precedent?
Yeah, thanks, Rosa, and thanks, Kim, for the question. So for those of you that aren't aware, Homestar is one of a number of really great rating tools that are already available out in the market. It's offered by the New Zealand Green Building Council, and they take into account a range of different factors. But one of the things that NZGBC has been really deliberate about is making sure that they're aligned with some of the targets that we set through some work that we consulted on in 2020. So that's whole of life embodied carbon and operational efficiency frameworks, which we consulted on. Now, those targets aren't regulatory at this point. They just were proposals that show an indication of the direction that we're heading in. It is important, though, to note that we will be consulting in the future, likely early next year, on future regulatory requirements for embodied carbon and operational efficiency, and we'll navigate how tools align with that as we go through that process, because we want to make sure that people can continue to use the tools that are available in the market. The other thing to bear in mind, just while I've got your attention, is Georgia did some great work there presenting on waste minimisation. So what we are putting in place are requirements around waste minimisation. So the government's planning on introducing new legislation this year, so into the House for debate, on requiring waste minimisation plans for building and construction. And we're also planning on introducing requirements for commercial buildings and multi-unit residential buildings to hold energy performance rating certificates, which will lend to things like how you're using your energy in your building and reducing your emissions. So those things tie really nicely to energy use and how you can reduce your emissions, and how we stop waste and reduce overall embodied carbon. So some really clear links there between the work that the Climate Action Toolbox is doing and our future requirements.
Great, thank you so much, Susanna. We probably have time for one or two more. There's been a question through, why did we start with the construction industry, which I think we've spoken to throughout, but what sectors are you thinking of next? Georgia, do you want to touch on that?
Sure, I can touch on that. So we started with the construction sector, obviously, because we had this opportunity with BFCC to undertake that research first. So we wanted to be really clear on the motivations and barriers for a particular industry before we went to go and develop that sector specific content. So that was super helpful to get us started with construction. Also needed a bit of an extra hand. There's a mountain to climb with the construction industry. So we really wanted to be a part of that solution there. Going forward, we've got some ideas around the industries that we want to tackle next. One of those is manufacturing, but that's not locked in yet. Now that we've introduced this other piece into the natural language assessment, that little 2-minute piece at the start, we can start to collect data on who's using the tool and what industries they come from. So if we find that there's a lot of people coming from one particular industry, it would make sense for us to continue there. So share it around and we'll figure out who's using it, and then we'll be able to commit to the next steps on that one. But yeah.
Great, thanks, Georgia. And I think I'll just tackle one more and then I think we're at time. So there's been a question on whether this new change will impact businesses that were already entering their data and had saved results in the toolbox. The answer is no, it won't have any impact on that. So your saved results should still be there, but you'll see the new updated version of the toolbox. So I think that's all we have time for today. Georgia, I'll hand back to you to close, but thank you so much everyone for your time today.
Beautiful, thanks all, and thanks to all the panelists who have joined us. We did, I think, hopefully our crew's taken screenshots of the other questions, and we can reach out to people on specifics there that we haven't managed to get to today. So thanks again everyone for joining us. It's been wonderful presenting to you all, and we look forward to hearing your feedback on the new tool. I'll close with a karakia. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapunui, kia wātea, kia mama te nāko. Te tinana, te wairua ki te ara tangata. Koia rā e rongo, whakairihia ake ki ronga, kia tina, tina, huie, tai kie. Ka kite, thank you everybody.